Welcome back to the Jiu Jitsu Oracle. It's Ross and Calum as usual. We're joined by a very special guest today, William Tackett, for part 2 of our conversation about what it takes to win an ADCC Trials. William's going to take part in the West Coast Trials at the end of March. He's moving up to 88 kilograms for these trials, previously a winner at 77 kilograms. William, Calum and I are really interested in your preparation and what you've been doing at your new weight class. So how are you feeling going into the trials at the end of March?
I'm feeling great. Yeah, I'm feeling real good. I had a really solid start to the camp. I had a little speed bump mid-camp where I had a minor injury in my hamstring, which I don't mind sharing because it's not really that big of a deal. It just took me a few days out of training just to kind of rest. But I can continue to lift during that time. So for me, a lot of people will get all super upset if they have a minor injury that keeps them out of training. But as long as I can still be on the mat, teach classes, observe training, coach people, yell at people while they're doing their competition rounds, and then I can still lift, then I'm happy. Obviously it's not ideal, but I had a good camp already leading up to this point, so I'm not too upset. And also sometimes it kind of puts a little bit more of a fire underneath my butt to kind of buckle back down and get back to work. Because, I maybe missed out on some time. So that's good too. So I'm really excited to hit this week training really hard, get some good conditioning in. I'm looking to get my conditioning up really solid for this ADCC. That's what I like about the trials is the shorter time limits. So it's kind of a little bit more similar to a sprint. So I like to really go out there and keep a really solid high pace and be able to sustain that pace for the 6 or 9 minutes, depending on if you go to overtime, or for that finals, that 8 to 12 minute if you go to overtime. So for me, 12 minutes, it's a long time, but I can sprint that hard, I can sprint for 12 minutes in a jiu-jitsu match. In a jiu-jitsu sense, I couldn't actually sprint for 12 minutes, but I could go pretty hard in a jiu-jitsu match for 12 minutes and I can be feeling pretty good afterwards. But ideally, it wouldn't have to go to that. Ideally, I could put, strong enough pace in that 8-minute time limit that, I'd, beat the guy down conditioning wise, break him mentally, and then I can get to a dominant position and lead to my sub by just keeping that high pace. So for me, that's what I've really been trying to emphasize this camp. And maybe the last year is using my newfound physicality by moving up to the next weight class, using my conditioning that I've had since I've been in lower weight classes and trying to combine those to really beat on people in the matches and just kind of outpace them and get them to a point where they're really tired. I mean, I'm tired too, but I'm expecting to get there because that's my game plan. My game plan is to go out there and push the pace. So I know I'm going to get there in the match. Whereas not a lot of people expect to go into the, deep, dark tunnel of, not really seeing where you're going, breathing heavy, stumbling because you're so exhausted, whereas I'm prepared to get there, and I put myself there regularly with my conditioning training, with my strength training, and occasionally with rounds. Not quite as much with rounds because I don't want to cause injury, and that's a good way to cause injury is getting overexhausted in a training session. But as long as I can keep that pace, I'm confident that I can go out there and do really well. So I've been really emphasizing that in my camp and my most recent camps. I'm sure maybe you guys had seen my match against Owen O'Flanagan on Grapple Fest when I won the Grapple Fest title a few months back. I just kept a solid pace from start to finish, and I could literally feel him start to crumble in the last 6-7 minutes where I passed his guard maybe once or twice in the first 10 minutes, but the last 5 I passed his guard 3 or 4 times. So I knew that once as later the match went on, as long as I kept a solid pace and just kept really, really solid pressure on top, that he was going to eventually just start to crumble, and that was going to give me more and more and more. It actually increased my confidence. A lot of times in the gym, I start to even put the pace even higher, even though I'm more exhausted when I feel them start to break, and it encouraged me to keep going. You can see the finish line at that point. So that's been kind of my strategies as of lately. I had a similar scenario with Harry Lewis, but him I had trained literally nothing while I was in UK, a little bit, but not quite as much. So I didn't have as strong as a throttle, but this time I'm really trying to go in there with a good throttle and be able to keep my foot to the floor in the matches and go out there and put on some exciting performances.
Could you run us through what your protocol is during your camp for improving your cardio? And then a question off the back of that, Do you feel like you were mentioning earlier, everyone's skill set is really good these days? Do you think stuff like having elite cardio is the kind of thing to make the difference with everyone else having a pretty good skill set?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the second portion of like how cardio is so important. I think that's a good place to start because if you look at it like this, like if you look at wrestling, something that's been a lot around competitively for a lot longer than jiu-jitsu in like the US or even in just across worldwide. Like jiu-jitsu hasn't really been that popular up until like the last maybe 10 years. And even then it's not even close to how popular wrestling is. And wrestling has been this popular for, 50, 100 years or whatever. So wrestling has just been huge. It's involved in schools and all these different things. And a lot of times in wrestling, like when you watch matches, the better guy doesn't necessarily win. It's the guy that has like the stronger gas tank, has like the better pace and is more physical and can just go through there and break the opponent. Rarely do you see guys just go out there and tech fall people in, 10, 15 seconds. And if they do, that's because it's a mismatch. Most of the time, like the matches go a few minutes and one guy you can clearly see start to break and then you can see the victor. So something that I see the Rotolo brothers and some of these other competitors do really well is exactly what I'm talking about. They go out there and they put such a high pace on their opponent that like they might be better than the guy, but they also might not be. The skill level might be semi-even, but they always go out there and they get that submission because they're able just to put the pace on the person until the person physically just can't keep up with them anymore and will break. And I felt that way in matches. I've had people put paces on me in matches where like I wasn't there conditioning wise. And in the middle of the match, I can literally feel myself just kind of give up and just be like, okay, yeah, I'll just accept this bottom position and just try to like breathe it out and start to regain my energy or whatever. Or, okay, now there's only 2 minutes left and he mounted me. Let me just try not to get submitted. You know what I mean? Like, so you can feel people break when you put those high paces on them. So I think that's super important at this high level because everyone's skill set is so like even or so close. The margins are so small that it's going to lead to really close matches. Or like, decisions on either way. Anything can happen at that point. The skill level is so close. But if the skill level is close, the one guy is massively more prepared physically, then this guy's going to win most of the time. So for me, I feel like why it's so important. I look at it that way. So I really try to put a lot of emphasis into that. Both me and my brother, if you watch our matches, are pretty high pace, especially Andrew's. So we try to put a high emphasis on that. Now, as far as what was your other question, your first initial question?
Yeah, so what is your protocol in camp? Like, what do you do to improve your cardio? Like on the bike, like do you go for runs, that kind of thing? What is your protocol in the camp to improve your cardio?
Yeah, that changes really. But lately, what I've found that I really like doing is I like trying to not replicate the same type of conditioning I get in training, but kind of like change it a little bit. So, for example, if I do 7-minute matches or 6-minute matches, then I don't necessarily like to do 6 minutes of cardio and keep it like a high pace. I'd rather do like 35 minutes of cardio and keep it at a lower pace and really build that like that low intensity cardio range. Because for me, I always kind of operate in that 140 to like 200 heart rate range when I'm training. Like that's kind of like where it like just resides. It's like that high heart rate. Whereas like I don't necessarily train like that lower heart rate, like 130 to 145. Like I'm not really in that range much when I'm rolling. I'm more higher range. So if I can train that range, then I'm training something that I'm not necessarily training on a regular basis. So if I'm going for runs, like I'm keeping slower paces. I know miles to kilometers is not going to make sense because we operate on different measurements. But for me, like I'll run at a slower pace per mile or whatever, and just try to go for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And just try to keep that solid pace. And maybe towards the end of like the last, mile or, last 7 minutes or whatever, I'll really pick up my pace and I'll try to increase, my time and then try to make it more of a race. But I try to get that really good, low sustaining cardio. I feel like that really helps and it helps my recovery too. It helps me burn fat, all that good stuff. So that's something I've been doing recently that I really like doing. But then on top of that, I do like to hit like visualization cardio sessions where like, I'm visualizing that I'm in a match and I have like a timer that's like the time of the match. And I'm just trying to like imagine that I'm beating on the guy for the entire time limit. And I'm trying to put as high of a pace as I can within that time limit. Because I feel like that's really good for leading up to tournament is the visualization part. Like I might be on a treadmill and I'm sitting there like I'm in a treadmill and I'm like fainting or something like while I'm running or just like imagining that I'm just like chasing this guy down and I'm putting a pace on him and I'm just imagining that I'm kind of beating him up and he's starting to break. And I have to put a higher pace. And I just push that for, that 7 minutes. Typically, I don't run at like a high pace. I run at lower paces. If I'm doing like sprint sessions, it's on like the bike, or lately I've been doing a lot of the rower machine. So my actual routine typically is like training multiple times a day on Monday, jiu-jitsu wise, and Tuesday, same thing. But then after on Tuesday night, we'll hit like the bike after class. If I can rep that bike after class, that really helps me kind of finish that day off strong. And then Wednesday is typically a rest day. So I'll go for like one of those long cardio sessions on top of like a light jiu-jitsu session. So I might hit like Wednesday morning, a light drill session, maybe some specific rounds and call it then. And then later that day, go for like a 30, 45-minute run, just to kind of get that recovery going and still be chipping away at that cardio. And then Thursday, back to the grind, hitting more jiu-jitsu sessions, weightlifting sessions throughout the week as well. And then the conditioning again, Friday night, really hard conditioning. And then I'll go for more of those like low intensity, long duration cardio sessions during the weekend, whether it's Saturday and Sunday, or if I feel like I need a full rest day, maybe I'll take Sunday off. But for me, it's just like trying to change it up, try to hit it from all areas. I get like the strength and conditioning training during my jiu-jitsu rounds, and then I can get like the pure intense cardio sessions during like my sprint rounds on the bike or the row machine, or even on the treadmill sometimes. And then I'll get like my lower intensity, long duration cardio sessions, like when I'm running or even swimming. So I haven't swam in a while, but I was swimming a lot whenever I won West Coast Trials back in 2021.
So you won the West Coast Trials at 77, then you went up to 88 for the East Coast Trials, got to the semi-final, got beat by Elder Cruz, came back and beat J-Rod for the bronze. Outside of the physicality, is there anything else between the divisions that you've noticed and it's made you change the way you do jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, it's a lot harder to play guard at 88 against some of these guys. Some of these guys, it's really easy to play guard against. Like you can just pull guard and leg lock them, because 88 guys don't know as much about leg attacks. But then you have some of these guys at 88, mostly the guys at the top, that just put super solid pressure on top, and they're so strong. It's exhausting trying to play off your back. So I don't really play off my back too much anymore. I'm trying to find a good balance between like going for takedowns and dropping back on subs to attack the legs and getting back up and attacking, kind of like how Gary Tonin does, where he's like chaining everything together. I'm trying to find that balance, but it's tough. So at the East Coast Trials, I wrestled everyone. I didn't pull guard at all at East Coast Trials, but I got like reversed in my match against Elder, right? I put on my butt, and rather than just like getting back up and wrestling, I was like, okay, I think I could probably leg lock him. Let me just like try to leg lock him for like this point in the match, and then I don't think he'll pass me. So then if we overtime, I can wrestle him again. So that's like it was like a thought process change mid-match, which I'm against. Like I always tell people, like your strategy at the beginning of the match is the best way to beat them. That's why you made that strategy. Don't change it mid-match. There's some scenarios where you can like alter your game plan, but you don't want to change it. You don't want to like go completely different paths. My path was not to play guard. I did not want to play guard against him. I wanted to wrestle and try to get to his back. Like that was my goal. But then I ended up playing guard for the majority of the match, got my guard passed, and then I lost by the 3 points because I didn't have enough time to try to get that back after the guard pass. It was maybe like a minute or a minute and a half left in the match at that point. So I was just trying to chase him and wasn't able to get anything going. So for me, that was a big mistake on my end, was changing my strategy. So I'm really against that. It's like changing strategy. So for me, I'm just trying to go into the ADCC trials this time, like I said, hitting the strategy I've been working on in all my matches, and whatever that looks like for me.
I think 88's a really interesting division because there still seems to be a sort of differential between guys who have success with a very wrestle-heavy style. So we see that in Europe with like a Santeri Lilius, and then you see also like a Taylor Pearman or previously an Owen O'Flanagan have a lot of success with a lot of subs and leg attacks. Do you see that in the division, that there's still a sort of like a divide, and there's sort of like two ways to win, as it were, and it sounds like you're trying to blend them both together a little bit.
Yeah, I always tried to become like the most well-rounded grappler I can, just because I feel like that's what we're all to do. We're trying to be well-rounded as a martial artist. That's our goal. And then I still feel that, though. I still feel like there is two different ways to win, and I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to win like the way that I feel like is the best way to win, and maybe that isn't the best way to win now, but long term, like if I work on blending things together, it's going to be so much better for me. Like by the time I'm 28 years old, if I'm still working and chipping away at this and trying to get good at both wrestling and guard play and leg locks and sweeping and passing and back takes and everything in between, by the time I'm 28, like I'm going to be way ahead of the game. You know, all these guys that are just working leg locks or these guys that are just passing, like I'm going to dominate them when I'm 28. And that's my thought process. Like maybe that isn't going to happen, but that's what I think would happen because, you know, I'm already getting to the point where I'm having really close matches with these specialists. Like my wrestling is just as good, if not really close to like the best wrestlers. And my leg locks are like just as good, if not good enough to defend against some of the best leg lockers. So like, I feel like I'm already almost there on both ends. So like, you know, if you give me 5-6 more years of working at it, I feel like I'll be at the point where now I'm even better than some of the best wrestlers at wrestling. And then I'm better than some of the best leg lockers at leg locking and everything in between. That's my goal, is to be like just better at everyone everywhere. Because then at that point, like, okay, if we get to this position, I know how to deal with it from here. Now, if we get to here, I know how to deal with it. And that makes it most exciting too. That's why everyone thinks Gary Tonin is like the most exciting grappler, is because he changes it up. Like that match, I don't know if you guys remember when Gary Tonin fought Dante Leon on the Fight to Win stage, when they were doing who's number one on the Fight to Win stage, and they had like this absurd match that like they never stopped moving like the entire time. Gary Tonin was falling back on leg locks, going for back takes, going for wrestling. It was just so exciting. And all of his matches are that way because they don't ever stop moving. So for me, I'm not only just trying to be like the most effective grappler, but I'm trying to be exciting too. So I try to change it up, but yeah, there is still like two clear paths to victory at this time. I think that 88 kilo guys, there's some that are really good at defending the leg locks, but then like there's others that are just like not there yet, you know? Like you have the same scenario where Jacob Couch went in and just subbed everyone with like, there's like maybe like 80 or 90% leg locks. I think he maybe got like one triangle or something, but most of them were all leg locks. Like he subbed both J-Rod and Elder with leg locks. So you see people like that too in the US even. Like you pointed out Taylor subbing everyone in leg locks, or Owen, but it happens here in the US too, you know? So, and then you got guys like, you know, Elder that runs through everyone with wrestling, you know, so it could go either way really. I think anyone on that given day, anyone could win. It just has to be their day, you know? I felt like it was that way for me when I fought at ADCC, the actual ADCC, when I qualified and I lost to Szczynski first round. Leading up to that competition, I was like, I feel like almost anyone in this bracket could win it at any given moment. At least like 4 or 5 of these guys could win it. Like Mika could win it. Cade could win it. Dante could have won it. Like, I feel like I could have won it if I just, you know, got past Szczynski. I feel like I could have had a really good chance of winning it. I lost to Cade by decision at East Coast Trials in overtime. We had a really close match. And I feel like I had made a lot of improvements leading up to it. He was the one that won it by all subs. So, like, if I had, you know, competed against him, who knows? You know, so I feel like anyone can win it at this level. It just depends on, like, your preparation and, like, whose day it is. So, for me, going into the West Coast Trials, I'm just putting in all the work that I can leading up to it, getting to the strongest camp possible, and then hopefully I go out there and that just all pays off and it's my day and I can go out there and just win with all subs. That's the best case scenario.
How have you found the move up in weight, and are you having to do anything just now to maintain the new weight class that you're at, or are you pretty comfortable at it?
I'm having to eat a good amount of food. I'm having to scarf down some food and stuff myself every day. So that's something that I'm having to do to maintain weight. But to be honest, I went to East Coast Trials a little bit small. I was like, I mean, I wasn't small, but I wasn't as big as I am now. I walked in at 87.6 kilo without cutting. So I was a little bit under the limit without having to cut. And now I'm right about 90 kilo. So I'll have to cut like a few kilos, which is like really nothing. I can just, you know, lean out a little bit the week of, or I could just cut water weight, just whatever I prefer at that time. So for me, it's not that much different, but I think it will hopefully make a difference with the strength, because I felt strong against everyone in the matches except Elder. Like, I did feel like Elder had a pretty good size advantage on me, even though we both weighed in under 88 kilos. I felt like he had the size advantage. Like, he walks around pretty heavy. I remember, because he's come and trained with us quite a bit too. Like, because we're all on the same checkmat umbrella, so like we've had training sessions together. And I remember when he came and visited Fight Factory for a few weeks, he was walking around like close to 220. Like, he was a pretty big guy, which is like 100 kilo. So like, if he walks, I don't know what he walks around now, but if he even walks around anywhere close to that, like, I've never seen those numbers before. So like, he's gonna have like that dense muscle mass and be able to really lean out to make 88. So whereas like for me, I'm walking around 90 kilo, like not super lean. It's not gonna take much leaning out for me to make 88. So I'm not gonna go into 88 super lean yet. So I'm still trying to figure out how to get to that weight without like, overeating and gassing myself for training, but then like still maintaining where I want to be strong and not be undersized. So it's just finding that balance for me right now, because I've only competed 88 kilos like 2 or 3 times at this point, like trials, and then my 2 super fights in UK against Owen and Santeri, and then now it'll be West Coast Trials. So I haven't had a lot of experience at 88, so I'm trying just to gain weight and just try to see where I should walk around at, and then what is like the best cut for me. Because ideally I would go into 88 with like abs and like shredded and really good cardio. But like, it's just hard for me to like gain weight without like putting on a little bit of bad weight. Even though I'm eating super clean, it's just tough for me because I haven't been at this weight yet. So I think it's going to take a few cuts for me to now start kind of recomping my body a little bit. Like, after this cut, bulking back up, I'll be like a little leaner version of that weight now because I did a cut. And then like next time again, like another cut, and then another bulk, and then another cut and a bulk. And then finally I'll be in that like ideal shape where I'll be like solid, lean, strong, fast, and all that. So hopefully I'm able to dial that in before the actual ADCCs in Las Vegas. But in order to get there, I got to win the trials. So I'll focus on the trials right now.
I'm conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes left. I just want to touch on this with regards to your training. Whether you do gi and no gi, do it all. It sounds like you're trying to become as complete and as well-rounded a grappler as you can become. The reason I ask is because we've seen a phase in no-gi grappling where it seemed to be a lot of no-gi specialists were having a lot of success, and now we're seeing a lot of guys who play gi and no-gi having a lot of success. And you can see guys like Tommy Langacker, who were previously more known for what they were doing in the gi, come over, have a lot of no-gi success, and he's going to be taking part in the ADCC finals. So what are your thoughts on that, and what is your approach to it?
So my personal opinion might be different than some people's, or it might even match. I don't know where you guys stand on this, but for me, I felt like jiu-jitsu. Like, gi jiu-jitsu is still jiu-jitsu, no-gi jiu-jitsu is still jiu-jitsu. Like, at this point, like, the rule set doesn't change that much. That's really like the major factor differentiating between the two is like the rule set between gi and no-gi, like IBJJF rules and then ADCC rules. So like, for me, if I'm doing no-gi all the time, like, yeah, I'm going to have maybe like, I might get better at no-gi that much faster than the guy that's like doing gi and no-gi, but like, he's still doing jiu-jitsu and he's training in the gi. So it's still going to be like, it still makes him better. Like, I get better at jiu-jitsu I get better at gi jiu-jitsu when I train no-gi. Then I also get better at no-gi when I train gi. Like, I'm going to get better because it's all jiu-jitsu. But like, I do think that there is a small margin when you commit to just one that you do get better quicker. And any of the guys that say like, oh, well, I've trained gi like this entire camp and I've never really done no-gi, but then I win the trials or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, you're super talented and you're really good at the gi. Like, you're the best guy in the gi. Like, of course, you're going to be one of the best guys in no-gi too, because it's the same, But I do think that like, if I commit fully to no-gi, I am going to get like better a little bit faster than if I'm like putting a lot of emphasis in training gi and emphasis training no-gi. I do think that for a while there, the no-gi specialists were the ones that were just winning everything. And that's because the gi specialists had no idea what the rules were like in no-gi. They didn't know how to do leg locks. They didn't understand wrestling, none of that. So like, every time a gi guy would come over, they would just get dominated by the no-gi specialist. But then now we see the guys that do gi and no-gi coming over and winning. And that's just because like gi was way more popular for a long time. So like the guys at the top of the gi were like better than the guys at the top of no gi. They just weren't better at the no gi guys at no gi yet. They're just better at jiu-jitsu in general. They just didn't understand the rules yet. They didn't understand like the little no gi differences. But now you see these guys that are at the top of gi. They've had years of now prepping to make waves in the no gi scene, now coming over and starting to wreck it. So like for me, I don't train gi that much. Like I've trained in like the past few months, I've trained gi a few times, you know. I trained gi last week and the week before, but that was only one time. And that was just because like I was teaching the class, might as well hop in, wanted to do the extra training, you know. But like for me, I don't necessarily think that that's making my no-gi as better as if I would have done a no-gi session. I think I would have probably made more progress if I just did a no-gi session because I'm trying to compete in no-gi, right? If I was trying to compete in the gi, then yeah, it would make more sense to train in the gi, you know. But I don't necessarily think that like doing one versus the other is like a disadvantage. I just think that you can probably make better adjustments and create better techniques and get better at the little differences if you just focus on one versus try to focus on both. But like we're using like the best in the world as these outliers, right? Like the who's number one. I saw Lucas Lepre made a post saying like everyone that won tonight trains gi and no-gi. But it's like you got Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo's 200 and like what is he, 250, 60 pounds? Like he's like one of the biggest people in jiu-jitsu right now. He's also one of the best guys in jiu-jitsu right now. He's double golded the worlds before. He's one of the best in the gi. So of course, if he makes the transition to no-gi, he's going to like be super solid. But like he's been doing no-gi for years now. It's not like it's been an overnight transition. You know, he's been training no-gi for a long time. I've had a match against him back in 2020. So like he's been training no-gi for at least 4 years, you know, and he was training no-gi before then. So like it's not like a big transition. And you got guys like Mika Galvão who does gi and no-gi, but they've been doing no-gi since they were like 12. So it's not like these guys have never done no-gi. And yeah, you got to do gi to be good at no-gi, or you got to do no-gi to be good at gi. Like if you train them both and you're going to be one of the best anyways, because you have high talent, you're going to have success, you know? Like I think when you look at the best guys in the sport and we think like, oh, well, they do gi, so I got to do gi, right? And look, they're just the best guys in the sport. Like they would be winning if they just did no-gi. They'd be winning if they just did gi, or they'd be winning if they did both, because they're just the best and they have super high talent and they're just the cream of the crop. You know, that doesn't mean that like that's what's best for me or what's best for, you know, this other person, but that worked for them. And if it worked for them, then great. But I think everyone is different and everyone learns differently. And for me, like I've never considered myself to be like the most athletic person or the most like talented as far as sports goes either. So like I've had to like work really hard to get to where I'm at right now. And for me, like that's taking as many shortcuts as I can. So like a shortcut for me is like, if I'm not trying to do gi right now, then why train it? You know, just train no gi. Because if it is a shortcut doing only no gi, then I might as well take it, you know, because that's going to give me as much advantage as I need to get to the top.
I think we're on the same page. Am I being presumptuous, Calum, or am I correct?
No, I pretty much agree with everything William said there.
Yeah, well, I know not everyone agrees with that. Like, I think Lucas Lepre made the post saying, like, you got to train the gi. Like, it just gives you, like, the fundamentals that you need to do well in no-gi. I don't agree with that. Like, and I know people will disagree with me by not agreeing with that. But, like, I think you can get really good at either just by doing one, or you can get really good at either just by doing both. Like, there's differences. Like, there's lapel guard in the gi that you're not going to learn by training no-gi. And there's heel hooks in no-gi that you're not going to learn by training gi. You know, but if you train them both and you worked on, like, those little differences, then, you know, who cares? You're going to do fine.
Can I ask one last question, because it's a question that's popped up recently? Do you think the trials should be capped at a lower number? Do you think there should be criteria for athletes to get in? Maybe a certain belt rank you have to be before you get access? Or do you think it should be the way it is, where pretty much anyone can sign up until it hits 256?
That's a really good like thing that needs to be answered. Like that question's got to be answered by ADCC. They got to figure out what they're going to do, because 256 guys is a lot. You know, the 77 kilogram division just capped off like a few weeks ago, like weeks before the event. There's people in our academy that are like high level black belts that wanted to do it and aren't in it now. Like that I think are probably better than at least 100 of those guys in the bracket. You know, I feel like maybe there should be like a qualifier for the trials, like a trials for the trials or something. but maybe like a point system. Like if you win an open, then you get like an X amount of points to now like you have to have a certain amount of points to qualify now to do the trials, something like that. Because like you can't just have it where anyone can sign up. You know, if anyone can sign up, then I don't know. It doesn't put priority on like the best guys, because then there's going to be some people in there that are just going to be, 40-year-old dads, their sons competing at the Open the day before. So they're like, yeah, I'll hop into the trials, versus like the best of the best, I think we still find that like there's most of them are the best of the best, because everyone kind of is a little bit afraid of the trials. At least when I encourage people to sign up at the gym, they're like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready for that. I think there is that fear still, but I don't think it's quite enough to like make the play, like the fields level, to where it's like all of the best guys. So I think that they should probably do like points. I mean, what do you guys think? I feel like that's probably the best way to do it, right?
Yeah, we spoke about, we're both fans of the NBA, so like when the playoffs come, you have the play-ins for those that haven't quite qualified to be in the playoffs. So yeah, something like that, maybe the day before, for the guys that aren't in the top 32 or 64 to kind of have a smaller tournament to get into that bigger pool for the trials. That's something we'd spoke about. But yeah, something like that I think is definitely the answer.
That would be terrible, having to compete in a tournament before the trials, like the day before, 2 days before. That'd be awful.
But you wouldn't have to do it.
You what?
You wouldn't have to do it.
I know, but I'd still feel bad for the people that would. Like that would be awful.
It's either that or you have to face them in maybe the second round for you, because you get a bye in the first round. But it's just finding a way to. I agree. I think there has to be some sort of capping system, but then I don't know that it's necessarily great for athletes if they have to go around picking up points, because like you have to do that for the IBJJF to qualify for the Worlds, and it means most guys are having to head round Europe on their own currency, whatever it is, paying their way to get points to qualify for the Worlds, and they're already pretty credentialed. So I kind of see from that athlete's perspective, I don't know if points makes it easier than just having a first or second round match against someone who you can beat pretty handily. But at the same time, I think there does need to be something, because it is getting a bit ridiculous, the amount of people involved. For spectators, it's hard to set aside 8 or 9 hours of your day to watch the whole thing, but for athletes, I imagine it's 100 times harder.
It's a little brutal. Yeah. My first trials that I podiumed at was awful, because they did it all in one day. The American trials, which they don't do anymore. I know they do that for the UK trials, or the Europe trials, which is crazy. But here they did it all in one day too. And I had, I had 8 matches, because I didn't have a bye. I had 8 matches, made it all the way to the finals, lost in the finals, but I had 8 matches across the day. First match was 9 a.m. Last match was like almost midnight. It was just brutal. Like I would just have one match, be done, have to wait, coach my brother, take a nap, wake back up, try to get warm again, compete, repeat the process over and over. It was brutal. So they definitely need to do something. I don't know what it is that they need to do, but they got to figure something out, because it's getting out of hand. Like these events are just getting too big,
I don't think there's any obvious answer, but I would like to see some tries at doing something, shall we say.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe just like a qualifying tournament, right? Like the trials is really prestigious, so like I feel like you gotta maybe like qualify to get into it. I don't know how that would work though, because if one person wins the tournament, then there's only one person that gets in. Like that doesn't work. You gotta have it where it'd be like to do this tournament, then maybe like the top 50 or whatever. Something.
I just wanted to get an athlete's perspective on whether you think the trials are becoming a bit bloated and they maybe have to look at something just to manage that situation, because you don't want to get athletes frustrated by the competition, so I do think it's getting to the point where something has to be done. Maybe in Europe as well, they need to start stretching out to 2 days rather than the 1 day, because it is absolutely brutal for the guys.
Yeah, you guys got to switch to 2 days for sure. I don't know why they're still doing 1 day. That's ridiculous. There's too many matches to do in 1 day, I mean, if you want the athletes to perform at their best, you can't do it all in 1 day.
So, is there anything else you want to touch on, William?
No, thank you guys for having me on. I mean, unless you guys have other questions, but I think we've got a pretty good conversation going. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Good having you.
Yeah, if Calum has no more questions, then we know we've had a good conversation that's covered a lot.
Hey, Calum, you got any more?
I'm all good.
Oh, we did it.
We're joking because when William taught a seminar in Aberdeen, Calum had a few questions on his phone that we had to get through at the end of the coaching.
It was a small list.
But it's good that people come prepped with questions, right, William?
Oh, I love that. To be honest, like that's the best. Like if anyone's listening and is going to attend one of my seminars in the future or is just wanting to get better in the training room, like ask questions, like prepare questions before class. It's the best way to get better. Talk to your coach. Hey, I have this question. I need to get this better. You get subbed by a guy around. Hey, what should I do differently? Like ask questions is the best way to get better.
For now, William, thanks again for your time. I'm sure we've all got training to go and do, so
Yeah.
we best get off the call and get out to doing some jiu-jitsu.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'll be on my way to training right now. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thanks for coming, William.
Yes, sir.